Welcome. Thanks for joining. It's very weird being presenting and then there's no feedback and no one talking back to you or not on a stage. So it's very good. It's great. Looking forward to. So let's get stuck in. I'm just going to quickly start a timer so I'm aware of not running over. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Looking forward to this. I haven't done one of these in a while. So thank you for joining. Hoping you get something out of it. And let's dive in. It's definitely going to be a little bit of a wing in it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we go. So let's look at Xplore. So it is a developer toolkit for ServiceNow. My name is James Neale, as you're all aware, because you've joined the chat that says that I'm James Neale. I've been in ServiceNow since 2011. Actually started with a partner, did a whole load of crazy projects, and very quickly found that there was a need for a developer tool in ServiceNow. I actually founded ShareLogic in 2015, so we're a build and service partner. We do integrations and stuff. And I also founded the Dev Meetup in 2016 in London, which is still running, which is great too. Well, I'm not running it anymore, but Chuck, we've had some good times there, haven't we? So, and also done a few CreativeCon hackathons back in the day, and won a few of those as well. So what's the problem we're looking at today? This is one of my favorite photos that I've AI generated ones that I have used years ago at a knowledge conference presenting this as well. And it's just what developing and debugging scripts in ServiceNow can be painful. Now, Xplore does a lot more than just solving this issue, but one of the biggest challenges is with running building in ServiceNow, which is sort of somewhat been addressed in recent years, but it's still hard to actually write complex scripts, understand where things are going wrong, and let's have a quick look into that. So why is it painful? Well, you end up fixing scripts by trial and error, and that can be super slow and painful. You end up using GS log everywhere to try to trace code paths. We've all seen millions of GS logs stuck in the system logs table and things like that. Also, bloating your scripts. Some APIs just aren't documented, or they don't behave as expected. So, sorry, just check in chat to make sure that we're all good. Yes, GS info, because we of course always in scope. Yes, I use GS log there because that's the age-old one, but there's obviously lots of other ones as well now that you can use. System logs also end up in that case either becoming useless or overwhelming. I've seen multiple cases, and I'm sure many of you have as well. You're having millions of logs generated a day. At that time, it becomes really difficult to try and figure out what's going on if you're using standard debugging practices. Background skips can just be clunky. I used to do a lot of stuff in those and just quickly found it was very annoying going backwards and forwards and things. Again, they've done some improvements there. But then script debugger as well has its place. Definitely very useful. Definitely a great upgrade to be put out here. But it's it still is limited in what it can do. All right. So what's the idea? What if you could easily test code, inspect data, and understand what's happening in your instance? That would be pretty nice, wouldn't it? So here we go. We introduce Xplore. So Xplore is a toolkit for developers built in ServiceNow. You can run and test your scripts interactively. You can inspect data and objects instantly. And there's a whole load of other useful tools in there as well, which I'll show you in just a minute. In terms of key features, what we're looking at here, server-side and client-side scripts. So yes, it's useful to run server-side, but there's also times where actually, rather than using console, in your browser to try and debug client-side scripts, you could use Xplore. Very, very handy. You can run things, glide records, you can check objects, you can view, format, and test strings and large data. Massively helpful when you're doing integrations, which I do a lot of. So you can really see what's going on there. GS War, yeah, that's a good one. Code hints, keyboard shortcuts, more, and then obviously, as I've said, a bunch of other handy tools for day-to-day development. Now, what's the concept behind Xplore? I think it's worth getting this in because it really does sort of set the idea and set the background of why it's even here. Xplore comes from and is inspired by exploratory programming. Back when I started ServiceNow, we had sort of very limited documentation from ServiceNow, as you do it back in the day, and there was a lot of APIs and a lot of classes and things that just we didn't know we had to use, we didn't know how to use them. So the idea of actually just using them, testing with them, experimenting, learning, it is about curiosity and not just debugging. And you can do a lot of that very quickly within Xplore. So let's see it in action. If I can skip my screen here. So Xplore is packaged with an update set. You can download it from Share. You can download it from exploretoolkit.com, and that will link you to Share where you can download it. And you just install as an update set. I've had people ask me how to install it. I'm not going to go into that here. But essentially, once you've installed it, you're going to get some glasses installed at the top right-hand corner of ServiceNow. You do also have a menu item, so you can access it that way. So what we're going to do is click on that icon, and that's going to open up Xplore. Now, let's just have a quick overview of what's in Xplore and what it's actually looking like. So obviously the primary interface here is we've got a script on the left-hand side because we're doing a lot of scripting. And then we've got a few things on the right-hand side for tools and outputs and things like that. So let's just do a quick run through what we've actually got here. The first, on the top left, we've got the target. This is where we're running the code that we're writing. And you can see here we've got server and we've got client. They're fairly self-explanatory. I'm either running it on the ServiceNow server side, or I'm running it in my browser client. I've also got these things opener and opener GSFT main. And opener is actually the window that opened this tab. So that would be the ServiceNow instance from the other window that we just looked at. And then we've got GSFT main, which is where all your forms are rendered and things like that. Obviously, this is, doesn't always appear. It depends on where you open Xplore from, but you can actually run client-side script within those things. So you can get access to things like gform and other stuff if you do it that way. The second dropdown that we've got here is the actual scope that we're running in. And obviously by default, we open in the scope that is you've actually got selected in ServiceNow. In this case, I'm just in global, so we can run scripts in global. But as you can see, we can actually run scripts in any scope in ServiceNow. We're not actually limited like background scripts are to scopes that we've created. And this is super powerful. I've seen quite a few comments more recently, actually, of people saying it's been so handy to just run quick scripts in there to see what's happening in specific scopes for specific applications. Really, really useful. Next up, we've got just talking a little bit about the script interface itself. We've got a whole bunch of buttons. These are new. These have only just been released this year. Really, really helpful. So we've got all your standard stuff that you would expect. A couple that I want to touch on that's really useful, because I think a lot of people miss this, is this help button. Just click this and you'll see that there's a whole load of keyboard shortcuts you can use. This saves a massive amount of time and makes it more like an actual console interface, or sorry, an IDE or something. Again, I know ServiceNow made leaps and bounds in moving to this. This didn't used to be a thing, but it's I think it's been in Xplore for most of the time that it's been around. So very, very helpful for actually just coding on the fly and writing stuff and testing with it as you go. And then you've also got this button here, which will actually open the script debugger itself, and you can actually debug your scripts from Xplore within script debugger, which is really, really handy. On the left-hand side here, we've just got some icons. We've got an actual button so you can have the whole screen if you're not just working in scripts. We've also got script include. I don't ever use this, I'll be honest, but it's so someone wants me to zoom. Let's see if I can. I had zoomed a little bit already, but let's do a little bit more. So you can actually just import a script include straight into your script if you want to, and then just start working on it. And you'll see in a minute how powerful that is when I come into that. Let's just get rid of that for now. And then we've got some settings down here. I'm not going to run through all of these. They're pretty, you can have a look through these when you're there. You can change the theme if you want to. I know a lot of people like dark, but I don't know. I switch between the two depending on what sort of mood I'm in. And that's that really. So let's move over to the right-hand side here. We've got a script history. And just you can see in here, I've run one script on this instance, and I'm going to bring that in a little bit later when we just have a quick look at how things are working. We've got some basic tutorials in here as well. Very, very quick and easy just to have a look at what you could do with Xplore. So if you're not quite sure, you want to see some examples, have a look through here. There's a few things that are really useful. Release notes, super handy for seeing what's actually come out. Now, the output tab we'll come back to in a minute when we actually run a script, which I'm sure you're all super excited for. I am. Then we'll come into user data, which is a really powerful way of working with big strings in Xplore. Again, massively helpful if you're working with payloads for integrations, or you've got CSV files you want to check if they're doing anything, all sorts of things. Really, really useful there. Next up, moving on to the more sort of toolkit side of things. Are we able to zoom onto the presentation screen? I don't know if we can. I might be able to. Let's see. Yes, I can. Is that better, everyone? You can't see my face anymore, but no, never mind. Okay, good. People are happy. So, my phone's ringing for some reason. Uh, regex is a massively helpful one, which I use very often. In fact, when I'm doing regular expressions and things. And the reason this is built into ServiceNow and why it's so helpful is because other regular expression engines out there, which are not baked into ServiceNow, will give you slightly different results to what you'll see. And if anyone's done any sort of this stuff, they'll see, that actually testing in ServiceNow is really the best thing to do. So being able to just build in here, and again, this is why if you're just working on regex, you can just go full screen regex if you want to, and start working on that. I'll just give you a little bit of a highlight in here, so we can just type, and then it'll run, and we're matching on incident. And this will do group matches and things as well. So we can do, you can see how things are working. Very, very handy. And then you've got a whole bunch of things down the bottom to help you, just so you don't have to constantly reference everything. Obviously now you can just use AI to generate some regex patterns, but still really handy to test in here. Oh, you lost the eye candy. You're very, very, very complimentary there. Thank you. All right, next up, we've got table hierarchy. Now, this one, again, ServiceNow made there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of useful stuff in helping understand table structures and things. I still come back to this one from time to time, just because it's easy to just dive in. And the whole point of this is, what does my actual table structure look like? So if I just search for incident, where does my incident table sit? We can actually just get a list of things of where it is, and we can see other things that are called incident, for example. And we can see incident task, they sit within the task table. Now I can actually refocus onto task here, and we can see all of the task tables in here as well. So very, very powerful, especially when it comes to things like CMDB. So if I want to do CMDB CI application, for example, now you can search on label as well. I'm by habit just using the table names themselves, but you can see how the extension happens throughout ServiceNow's database structures. Really great way as well, if you're doing a lot of CMDB work, to say, where should this actually go? I've got a name for something. Does the table exist? You can easily search and find things in there. Am I actually running out of time? Next up, we've just got logs, and there's a whole load of stuff in here today. So a whole load of stuff in here, so you can just see what's going on. Let's dive into some scripts because we haven't got a lot of time. And I'm just going to run gs.getUser here. And you can see when you run a script, what it actually does is takes the output of the last line of the script. So if I put this down here, it's going to run it. It's still going to see gs.getUser. If I actually then do hello world in here, then we'll see we've got a string hello world. Now, when we actually run this is actually going through the object, looking at everything in there, and presenting everything out to you, so you can see the contents of the objects you're working with. And this is where that exploratory programming concept comes in. So I can see all of the different properties that are accessible on here. So there's a lot of these are now restricted. This has been, I understand why ServiceNow are doing it, but it is a bit frustrating sometimes when you can see what you want, but you can't get access to it. But that's just part and parcel of the thing. At least you can see that it is restricted. And we can do things like run functions in here. So if I come down to, for example, get the first name, I can actually click on these parentheses, run the function, and get the name out of it. So really handy for seeing exactly what's going on in that case. Next up, let's just jump back to the, if I can figure out how to do this again. There we go. Let's just jump back to ServiceNow. And from ServiceNow itself, you can actually pump out into Xplore really easily. So jump out into Xplore. And you can just right click on a record, open record in Xplore, or you can do it from the record itself and do it that way as well. I actually I was looking for an incident. Let's go to incident, for example. And if we open an Xplore, we're just going to get a quick thing here. You can do this from lists as well, so you can actually see the whole list as well. We can see what's going on here, and we can actually then go and do things like edit it. So if this is locked down because it's closed in your instance, perhaps we just want to go in, want to set the state to, I don't know, 2, gl.update, and we'll actually see we're getting the output of gr update here. So we've got the string here, and then nope. Thank you. Keyboard shortcut's not working. And you can see this has updated the glide record here. This is massively handy when you're just working and testing, debugging. You want to fix things on the fly. There's quite often times with a lot of customers that we work with, they're big customers, they need a lot of things doing at the same time. We can actually write Xplore scripts and run them safely because we can cancel them as well, and do a lot of good stuff on the fly. Just trying. Does it work during impersonation? It does work during impersonation. If you impersonate someone, it will recognize that you've impersonated and still allow you to access Xplore. So you don't actually need to give that user the role. Again, yeah, just good point, massively handy there. So let's have a look at user data here, because I think this is another very cool thing. So if I just paste in this string here, I've just got a payload from somewhere. And I want to see what's going on here. So the first thing that I can do, which is kind of handy, is I'm going to say it's going to be a JSON object. Just prettify it for me, please. Right. Okay, I can read it. That's great. This alone saves a huge amount of time finding, working in other things. You're not sending data to other systems online, trying to get them to prettify it. It's all done within the platform. Very, very nice. And what we can actually do now is we can use the user data variable, and we can now step through our object. So we can actually step in and see each individual thing in here. Now, at the moment, this is only running 2 levels deep, but we can actually run and click Explore and just keep going all the way to the bottom of the tree there. Again, very, very useful for seeing what's going on. You can then feed that into scripts that you're running so that you can use them and see what's going on. Okay. Thank you, Chuck. I do have until 45. Good. I've got an extra few minutes. Sorry, just making sure I'm on track there. Good. Glad everyone's loving it. So that's kind of the gist of things here. I'm just going to come back to this as well. So we've got a script in here. I actually ran this script in my 2016 session at Live. That's scary, 9 years ago. And just it's a great example of just showing the sorts of things that you can do. So I've got a function. Maybe this is in a script, and I can actually run this in here, and I can generate all the output. You can see this is giving me an array. So I can see the array as a string. If I scroll down, I've then got all the individual elements of the array as well. And again, you can step into these and see what's going on. You've got this path up here as well to make it easy to navigate, as I'm sure you've seen. But what's really powerful about this now is we can just edit this on the fly. So we've got some print statements in here. We can do GS logs and everything else. Really good point I didn't actually cover on this is the log statements are actually captured by Xplore. So when I run this script, although it's doing print here, if I change these to infos, for example, and in fact, that would have been a great, just to show the keyboard, I'm just pressing Control D and I can step through and do multi-select. So that's kind of nice. So we can run that again. We're going to get blue. If it's an error, you're going to get red and things like that. We can actually now come and see the logs, and we can see the logs from the last run. So this is really, really handy. So I can go straight into system logs and see, well, first of all, Xplore's logged what it's actually run. So you can see what's happening there. But anything that's then happening, any logs generated behind the scenes, you'll see straight away. So even though we might have to use system logs sometimes, we can jump back and see very, very easily, oh, this is in the context of me running it. Great. Now, even if you've got millions of logs being generated, just narrowing it down to the exact time that your script ran here is very, very useful. Beyond that, and this is something that I do have to use from time to time, especially in more complex cases, is using node logs. Now, if anyone hasn't looked at node logs before, these are kind of the really low-level logs of the platform, which there's kind of a lot more verbose information in here, but it's much more difficult to search. But sometimes you do need to find out what's going on. There's sometimes some errors. There's the error that ServiceNow will surface on something to log might be sort of a very high level. So coming into the node logs, you'll actually get a much more in-depth picture as to exactly what the issue is. And this is especially helpful when there's like exceptions or pass errors or something like that, where ServiceNow is, logging something that's just not coming to the surface. Again, run your script in Xplore, and then you can test it in here, and you can see what's going on in here. Again, you've got HTTP requests, you've got events, you've got emails, application logs as well, if you care about that kind of stuff. So that is a very, very quick run through of Xplore. I use it not quite every day, but almost. Certainly when I'm, not having to do business stuff. But are there any? I will definitely take your money, Chuck. Yeah, sure. Yes. So no more. So Explore can be loaded on a PDI. Absolutely. It is free. It is available on exploretoolkit.com. Um, let's just jump back to this. So exploretoolkit.com, that will link you to Share, where you can go and download it. If you do have time and you're happy to give me a 5-star review on there, please do. If you've got any feedback or anything, please, you can provide that on there as well. There is also, let me close get back to, so you can see me. There we go. Hello, hello, I'm back. It's also hosted on GitHub. So if you do have anything that you want to add or that you want to suggest, please go ahead and raise an issue on there. It does take me a little bit of time to get around to fixing things, just with how busy I am, but I do get around to most of them. So, Felipe, you've been using Xplore since 2016. That's fantastic. Love to hear that. How well does it work with ServiceNow's latest version of JavaScript? So it does support, the latest version 5.02 does support ECMAScript, so that's fine as well. Do these scripts go into the same execution history as the background scripts? They do not go into the same execution history. They are just logged into the system log. It is something I've thought about whether I could do. I would also love to be able to include rollback in that, but someone from ServiceNow, if you know how to do that, please reach out and let me know, because that is definitely something that's a bit protected. I don't have access to. I have got some ideas floating around that, but it's a lot of work to sort of see where we can go with that. Is there a recommended best practice for using Xplore in production versus non-prod instances? So when you're using it in production, we always install it in production anyway. Now, if you're security conscious and don't want to, that is absolutely fine. There is a property you can look at. It's not on here. So if you come into Xplore, there are some properties in here. So you can actually mark, there you go. So if you've got a production instance, you can just turn this off, and you can prevent Xplore scripts from being run. In this case, I tend to say, this is admins only are going to be using this. You're not rolling this out to any other users. You're not, it's not something that typical users are going to be using. It is for admins. But yeah, exactly. Thanks, Tim. You'd only run it with an approved change request anyway. So you always have a backup plan for that if you are doing anything there. Does Xplore collect any data from the user or the instance? No, it does not. There's no data collection there at all. I'm pretty hot on privacy and making sure that's that's protected. So yeah, we don't do anything on that. That's great. I thought you always test in production. Oh, back in the day. No, we've told customers in the past we're stopping working with them because they only worked in production. So that was fun. But yeah. No, so rollback is not available for changes made. We don't capture rollback automatically in the same way that ServiceNow has the capability to do. But like I say, if you're doing anything in production, do it under a change request. Plan your changes, plan your stuff, obviously, and test it in dev and test. Can't. It's still unfathomable in some ways as to how many people just don't test enough. So definitely test. Any more questions? Otherwise, I'll wrap up and give you 3 minutes back between getting to your next sessions. Awesome. Any support or future thoughts on delegated development support? Unlikely going to be doing delegated development support. It's a lot of first of all, I don't know where I start with that, and B, like I said earlier, this is for sysadmins. We don't want to be handing that stuff out. So thanks everyone for your time. Thanks for your feedback and the applause. Appreciate it. And yeah, cheers.